Hello, everyone. This is Bryce Green at Toshiba, working the Sales Application Desk, and we're going to be getting started on today's TGIF webinar. We have a guest on the line. We have Oaisys, and they're going to be giving a little presentation on what's going on with Oaisys and their products with Document and Tracer. I'll hand this over to Tony, so go ahead. Take it away, Tony.
All right, thanks, Bryce. So everyone, my name's Tony Poor. I'm the manager of sales services over at Oaisys, which is a long-handed way of saying that I'm in charge of the sales engineering group, basically handling all of our pre-sales inquiries, some of the technical questions that come up. And today we want to talk about managing compliance and risk with our call recording tool. Some of you might already be familiar with Oaisys. For some of you, this might be an introduction. But what we want to do today is not just talk about call recording, but talk specifically about compliance and mitigating risk, and how recording can help you do that. So the goal is by the end of the presentation, potentially have some answers for some of your clients on how to mitigate risk, and potentially have a way to talk to new customers and prospects about introducing recording, ultimately the goal being to increase the total value of your sale with the Toshiba products. So what I want to do first is just a brief agenda. We'll talk a little bit about who Oaisys is, what we do, what our history with Toshiba is like. Talk a little bit about what I mean by voice compliance, and talk about what we mean by mitigating some of those risk factors. And then we'll talk specifically about how Oaisys and how call recording can help you mitigate some of those risk factors. We'll talk a little bit about the current promotional states that we have going on. And then at the end, I really like to open it up for Q&A and have as many questions you want, either about the presentation or just about Oaisys or call recording in general. So I'd like the presentation portion to be relatively brief, and spend as much time as we can afterwards answering any questions you have about the product. So first things first, who is Oaisys? We have been in business for about 16 years. We have developed a number of different software solutions and hardware solutions that are geared towards contact centers. So we've developed complete ACD packages. We've developed contact center solutions. For the last several years, we've been focused exclusively on media monitoring and capture, which is another way of saying that we do call recording. We can also do screen and desktop recording, but at our core, we're designed to record the audio conversations and be able to save those conversations for playback. We have been a partner of Toshiba's for a very long time, much longer than I've been involved with Oaisys, probably for the majority of the time that we've existed as a company. So we've had a long-time partnership, not only on the development standpoint, but on the sales front as well. So our platforms are uniquely designed to work very nicely with the Toshiba family of products. We are headquartered in lovely Tempe, Arizona, where today it's supposed to be 112 degrees. We do also have a European headquarters in Cambridge in the UK, where it's probably much, much cooler today. There are two basic products that we have with Oaisys. For those of you that are familiar with us, these are probably going to be just a basic review for both of these. The first product is called Document. Think of Document as that entry-level platform, or that basic platform that's specifically designed to do call recording. It's going to go in and create what we call a digital media document from all of your phone calls. We have a patented technology called portable voice documentation, and it actually records these calls and stores them in this PVD format. So it's going to store all this audio on a centrally designed server. You can access the calls to that server. You have the ability to organize them, retrieve them, play them back, annotate them, share them, whatever else. Document is the ideal solution for that company that says, I need to record my calls in case I have to have them, for whatever reason, whether it's because they're required by law to record them or they want to make sure that they're entering sales information correctly. But if a company says, I need to record calls just in case, Document is the absolute perfect solution. It's priced at the entry level. It's got those basic features that most organizations require. From a benefit standpoint, it gives you the ability to really easily and very quickly grab information, share it without having to transcribe information, without having to write a copious amount of notes. Really easy to find that recording and share it with other people. It improves accuracy because obviously if I capture the entire interaction with a customer, I can go back and verify exactly what was stated, what was said, and annotate when those things were stated and when they were said. With that in mind, it's also going to help you mitigate risk. So if you are documenting all of your phone-based transactions, whether it's because you want to, make sure that there's no billing disputes, whether it's to make sure there's no, fraud or insurance disputes or anything like that. Document can do that for you. And then it's also really great with regards to customer retention because it's going to give the businesses insight into how their customers are reacting because obviously this information has been documented. So think of Document as the base level system. It's designed to record and let you go find those recordings and play them back. For those companies that need more than just basic recording and playback, there is an option called Tracer. Tracer is, think of it more for the contact center that wants to use this to train agents or improve performance. So Tracer has the exact same core feature set as Document, but it's got some advanced capabilities designed specifically for quality assurance, for coaching, for personnel development. It's got integrated live monitoring. It's got the ability to record agent desktop video. So if I want to record what my agents are doing on their computer while they're talking, I can do that as well. It's got embedded evaluation tools. So if I want to do agent scorecards, I can do that. So when a customer says, I need to record because I want to make my call center better, we immediately start to think about Tracer. Major benefits here are you can identify best practices. You have the ability to go in and not only highlight which calls are the good calls, but you can identify why they're the good calls and then use those to help train other employees. It's also a very valuable tool from a regulatory and compliance standpoint. So both of these applications are very popular within the Toshiba sphere. When we demonstrate these products to customers, we can typically demonstrate both of them together and then let the customer choose which one is the right one for them. But when we talk about the Oaisys product line, what it really boils down to is either Document or Tracer. In terms of how we deliver things, Oaisys has a vision for how we deliver to the customer market. And it's a vision that we call Oaisys Always. What that means is that regardless of how the customer is set up, Oaisys can deliver a spectrum of options to meet the needs of that particular customer. So if the customer has a premise-based telephony solution and wants to have premise-based recording, we can do that. If they've got cloud-based solutions and they want to have a purely cloud-based recording option, we can do that too. We have a model called the hybrid cloud model where the telephony might be on site, but you want to have the recording in the cloud. We can talk about accessing those recordings in different ways. Some people want to access them from their PC. Other people want to access them from a mobile phone or a smartphone or a tablet. That's fine. Bottom line, and the driving factor here is that regardless of how the customer is set up, Oaisys has a solution that can be configured to meet the needs of that customer. So whether it's a really tiny customer that just wants to record a handful of phones, all the way up to the enterprise-sized customer that might be recording several hundred phones at a time, Oaisys has a solution that can meet those needs. So that's the Oaisys commercial. Let's talk about why we're here specifically, and let's talk about voice compliance. So what do I mean by voice compliance? Well, pretty much every industry today is subject to some sort of state or federal regulation. There's e-discovery requirements, there's HIPAA requirements, PCI requirements, you name it. There's an acronym for just about every industry that's out there. Certain industries have to document their telephone calls. It's a requirement. If you're in the banking industry, if you're in the financial trading industry, insurance, collections, emergency response, or 911, those organizations are required by law in most cases to record those telephone calls. Other industries might not be required by law to record, but there is a ton of value in recording that can help them be compliant. But just about every industry out there is impacted in some way by regulations, and recording the calls is a great way to help meet those regulations. What are some of those common challenges that we see specifically in the Toshiba and Oaisys shared space? Well, one of the primary ones is PCI, or commonly referred to as PCI DSS. It's the Data Security Standard for Credit Card Transactions. Some of you are probably very familiar with this already. If you're not, PCI is basically the legislation, or I should say the mandate that Visa and MasterCard and American Express got together to create that says if you're going to capture sensitive customer account information, you need to protect sensitive customer account information. So if those calls are recorded, you need to make sure that you employ and meet those data security standards from a PCI standpoint. Otherwise, Visa and MasterCard can shut your business down. So a properly designed call recording solution can help facilitate compliance. If you just go buy some Mickey Mouse recording platform off the street and plug it into your PC, you could very well find yourself out of PCI compliance. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or FDCPA, That's another huge one that we get with a lot of our collection customers. That prohibits debt collectors to do anything that would be considered abusive or mean to their customers. The burden actually rests with the collection agencies to prove that they didn't do anything wrong. The easiest way for them to prove that they didn't do anything wrong, turn over all the recordings that they had with a particular customer and prove that, in fact, they followed the letter of the law and they were not abusive or mean to any of their customers. The easiest way they can do this, obviously, is to record everything. So if they're not recording everything, it could very easily turn into a he said, she said scenario. And again, the burden rests with the collection agency. On a lesser extent, we get the telemarketing sales rules, which basically means that if you're selling a product over the phone, you can't misrepresent anything. You have to make certain disclosures to make sure that everything's represented properly. If you record your calls as a telesales or telemarketing group, it's very easy to go back and prove that you didn't do anything wrong. Another area that we see a lot of exposure in is HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. HIPAA requires organizations to comply with minimum security standards for health-related data. And if you record your calls, you're going to want to make sure that if you are capturing those conversations, that it's properly configured, properly managed to meet those HIPAA standards. So those are 4 very common scenarios that we come up against. Obviously, there are others, but these are probably 4 that you'll want to familiarize yourself if you're talking to any of these types of customers. So how can recording help mitigate some of these compliance issues? Well, from an Oaisys standpoint, one of the first things we can do is we can specifically target recording. I can set up filters to only record in certain criteria. You know, maybe I only want to record certain extensions. I only want to record ACD agents or certain groups, certain DNIS numbers, certain inbound numbers or account codes. You name it. We've got the ability to target our different types of recording. And these filters can work across all different call states. So whether it's a call transfer, call placed on hold, a conference call, you name it. We can trigger it on and off. We can actually, when you trigger it on, you can actually look back to the beginning of the call, meaning if I'm in the middle of a call and I say to myself, man, I should be recording this, I can not only record it from that point on, but I can actually go back and get it from the beginning of the call if needed. We can also make all of this happen not just manually, but systematically through the use of our APIs. So we can automatically start and stop recording relative to the cursor position on screen. What that means is, let's say I'm capturing credit card information and I want to black that out for security purposes. When I put my cursor in the credit card field, that can trigger Oaisys to stop the recording and then start it back up when I move to the next page or to the next field. Another way that we can ensure compliance is to make sure that our storage is secure and encrypted. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. Number one, we do have patented technology that offers a very high level of security. We can record, store, and organize these calls in our proprietary format. All of the access is provided via encrypted streaming, and sharing can be done through links in our system as opposed to having to send a WAV file out to somebody. Once you send somebody a WAV file, you don't control it anymore. So from a compliance standpoint, that could be a huge gap. Well, we make it so that you don't have to do that. We also offer different levels of information access. So your permissions can be set up by call data. Permissions can be set up by your management access. You know, I could say you only have access to certain ACD groups, certain agents, certain phone numbers, account codes, you name it. Another thing we can do is something we call authenticity verification. So if you're going to use a call recording as legal evidence, you have to prove that it's legit. Digital audio files can be very easily edited or manipulated, and they're not intrinsically considered authentic. So if you're going to use them in a court of law, the court of law is going to require that there's some sort of watermark or digital signature to prove that it's verified. Obviously, we embed a proprietary digital signature into each document, and then you can show that off in court. We also offer something we call variable data lifecycle management, which is a fancy way of saying you can keep certain calls for certain amounts of time and other calls for different amounts of time. So you'll get customers that might say, hey, I have to record calls and keep calls for 7 years. But maybe that's my financial trading group. Maybe I also have a customer service group. I only want to record those calls for a month. That's fine. We can create customizable stage and purge settings that will keep certain documents based on whatever functions they are, account code, extensions, caller IDs, user entered data, tags, you name it. So we can get really, really granular when it comes to enforcing how long you want to keep those calls. So the example I gave earlier, if an organization normally purges all calls after 6 months, but has to retain certain calls for 5 years, we can do that, and we can let the users manage that really, really simply. So if you are going to keep a call for 5 years or 10 years, as you might have to in certain financial scenarios, how do we keep track of all those different calls, years and years back in the past? Well, we also have a tool called the archival database. So, yeah, in some scenarios, you've got to store calls and the associated data for years before you can get rid of it. So we enable an automated relocation of calls from the primary database to what we call an archival database, but you can still have instant access through the user interface tool on the computer, meaning I don't have to keep everything in one big bucket that's got 20 million calls in it. I could have a primary online database that has my most recent stuff, and then I could have the same type of access to my archive, which could have the majority of calls in it. That's going to make it much more easy to run searches on a day-to-day basis. You can do much more efficient data administration. So when you combine that feature with some of the variable lifecycle management tools, you've got a really flexible way to keep calls for as long as you need to keep them while not burdening your system and burdening your agents with having to search through millions of calls every time you want to do a basic search. One of our newest features is something called speech search. This is the embedded phonetics-based speech engine that allows us to search for certain calls based on a spoken word or phrase. In other words, I'm not searching by date or timestamp or caller ID. I'm searching for every time somebody said the words, "Please transfer me to your supervisor," or "I want to return this product." So this is a fantastic tool for a lot of reasons, but from a compliance standpoint, it can help you out if you've got a legal office that's doing e-discovery and you need to find all calls where certain case numbers or subjects were referenced. We give you a really easy way to do that. It's also got the ability to search for the absence of certain phrases. So if I'm a collections agency and I need to read my mini Miranda every time before I make a collections call, I could search for that mini Miranda, and if it doesn't show up in my speech search, well, now I've just identified every call that might be out of compliance. So it gives you some really easy tools to find records based on what you're looking for. That can reside on the same Oaisys system, and it can search the entire library, so, all million records if you want to, or I could just say search through this group of 20 calls if I want to make my searches really quick. Some lesser-known tools that we offer, but that still are helpful from a management standpoint. We can slice calls into multiple segments. We can merge two different calls into the same recording. We can redact or scrub data out of certain calls. We can also export just segments of calls. So if someone, maybe there's a 25-minute phone call, but you only need to share that 30-second clip, I can just share that 30-second clip. So we give you tools that will help you manage how that media is organized and stored as well. Right now, through the end of the quarter, we're just about to come up with some new promotions for Q3 and Q4, but they haven't been publicized yet. So right now we're still working on the Q2 promotions. If you sell a speech search-enabled program system between now and the end of the month, you as a rep would get a $100 gift card. We also are offering free tracer licenses to anybody who buys a speech search-enabled system before the end of the month. So speech search is a relatively new piece of our functionality. If you sell a system that's got speech search on it, you as a rep will get a spiff, or your reps that report to you will get spiffs. In addition, we will give the customer some free licensing to enable some of those tracer features, as long as it's purchased before June 30th. We typically do promotions every quarter, and those are usually announced right as the quarter starts. So probably in the next week or two, we'll have the Q3 and Q4 promotions. There's always spiffs. There's always freebies available, depending on what you're selling and when you sell it by. So we'll certainly send out that revised information when it comes about. But if you've got any systems that you're selling out there in the meantime, if you want to get a spiff, let's focus on speech search as well. So in review, Oaisys has been the preferred choice for recording Toshiba customers over the last several years. We offer reliable interoperability with your business communications platforms, with the CIX platforms as well as with the IP Edge. So we've got a proven integration with those platforms. We've got targeted solutions that are designed to help manage voice compliance as well as contact center challenges. there's a whole host of other functionality that we didn't even touch on related to contact center, process improvement, best practices. Today's discussion was more on the compliance piece, but our solutions are targeted to solve those specific problems. We have a true differentiator between ourselves and other call recording vendors, and that's the PVD technology. So that delivers our patented technology from a recording standpoint that offers unprecedented levels of security as well as user access and configurability. And inherently, we're one of the only true quality monitoring platforms that inherently is going to address all of your voice compliance concerns. So we've really pushed hard in the voice compliance market. We've made some fantastic strides. And we have a solution that's really, really suitable, not just for that enterprise-level customer, but for the smaller business that needs to be compliant. We've got a fantastic price point, an excellent product that's designed specifically for Toshiba and for those smaller businesses. So with that in mind, I'd like to just turn it over to the group. If there are any questions about voice compliance in general, about Oaisys in general, or about our ability to integrate with the Toshiba platforms, I'd love to hear them. I can certainly answer from a functional or a technical standpoint.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, so as the questions come in, I just want to give a friendly reminder out for next week's TGF webinar. It's on the new website program. So if you're not involved with your company's website and you know someone who's in your office who does handle that, make sure they attend that webinar. It's next Friday, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific Coast Standard Time. Looks like we got a couple of questions come in. This one's from Stan Stevens. Let's see. Can you control calls so they can't make calls to the West Coast when you are on the East Coast because you can't make a collection call before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m.?
Oaisys isn't designed to do that. We're designed to record the audio, and we're passively recording that audio. So that functionality does exist, and I know that there are other vendors that can do that. If you've got a predictive dialer, that's usually something that can be programmed in. If you're just manually dialing, that might be a function of the phone system itself. I don't know whether or not Toshiba allows that, but Oaisys is designed to passively record those calls and give you that information. That said, we could obviously report on any calls or show you any calls that would have taken place prior to a certain time. So while I can't prevent it from happening, I could run a report that says, show me all calls to these area codes that took place prior to 10 a.m. And then you can go beat up those reps for doing that.
We have another question. It says, what are the trunk seal lines, PRI, or stations, etc., limitations for document and tracer?
So we have some pre-bundled solutions. When we bundle a document solution and you buy a turnkey appliance from us, if you're buying the bundled document appliance for PRI, it's got a dual-span PRI board built into it. So if you've got more than 2 PRI, you're either looking at upgrading to a larger server or networking multiple document PRI appliances together. Either of those options are suitable. So in terms of the limitations, it's basically 2 PRI per appliance, but we can always network multiple appliances together. In terms of analog or POTS lines, that same document box, there's a flavor that has an 8-port analog board in it. So again, if you're doing 8 analog lines or fewer, you could use one of our document boxes. If you wanted to do more, again, we're talking about either upgrading to a tracer server or networking multiple boxes together. From an IP standpoint, those different document boxes could come bundled with either 20 or 48 licenses, but we do have the ability to scale. As of right this second, those document boxes will scale up to 100 users. In about 4 weeks, we're revising our platform standards to where you could actually scale up to 350 IP users on a single document. So that's just on a single box. Tracer, you're going to find similar limitations from a box standpoint, 350 IP users, but we can always network multiple boxes together. So I don't want to say there's no limitations, but for practical purposes, if someone comes to you and says, I've got 27 PRI, we've got a solution. It's just going to require multiple servers.
Okay.
So I hope that answered your question. It's kind of a vague answer because there's a lot of ways to take it. If you've got a specific scenario and you're saying, how would I configure it for X, let me know. You can either give Bryce your contact information, and I'll give you a call offline, or we can work through it. But in general, the limitations are really just guided by how many go on a single box, but I can always expand that.
That was, very informative there. Didn't know you were expanding the limits. That's a good news.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question that came in. It says, can you control the agents from calling the same number more than once so you're not harassing them? I don't think your tracer can control that, and I don't know of any way on the Toshiba side that we can control it other than running reports. That'd be like on your site, right, Tony? If you run a report, you can see.
Yeah, again, we're passively recording the audio. We're not preventing them. We're not even part of the call control. So I have no way of preventing an agent or forcing an agent to do anything from a call standpoint. I'm designed to monitor all that information and provide you access to that information. So if an agent started harassing somebody, while I couldn't prevent you from doing it, I could certainly alert you if it was happening, and then you could prevent it. If you're talking about something that would systematically block an agent from doing something, then typically you'd be talking about something at the dialer level, like a predictive dialer or a progressive dialer that doesn't allow the agent to manually key stuff in like that, which we're certainly compatible with, but that's not what our processing does. We are passively listening to everything.
Yeah, I was thinking that predictive dialer would be probably the best application for this.
Mm-hmm.
Other than your side tracer, there's also tasks, and with tasks, you should be able to go in there and monitor it on the standpoint of seeing what your agents are calling out and what the time frame is in between. Mm-hmm. But again, it's going to be passive. So far, that was the last question. I guess it'll be anybody else have any other questions? Anything you want to add, Tony?
No, I guess the only other thing is that we didn't really touch on here because it was so focused on compliance is we have a ton of flexibility. We don't have to provide the servers. We can provide software-only solutions, virtualized solutions. We can provide full turnkey solutions. So again, whatever your customers are looking for, we can provide that option. The best way, and I guess this will just be the parting thought, the best way to introduce call recording, because people often say, well, my customers aren't asking for it. That doesn't mean they don't need it. The best way to introduce it is to ask them how long they keep their emails. Because if I were to ask you that question, you'd probably say, well, I keep my emails for a year or 2 years or 5 years, or I'm so lazy I never delete any of them, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next question should be why? Why do you keep your emails so long? Well, the answer virtually 100% of the time is in case I need to go back and find something from that email, in case I need to go back and validate a piece of information. Okay? So then what are you doing with your phone calls? Because if you do business over the phone, the same logic should apply. Not designed to be a big brother platform. It's not designed to be something that your agents and managers should be afraid of. It's designed to protect your business. It's designed to help you be more effective with your business. So when a customer is just because they're not asking for it doesn't mean that they don't have a need for it. The best way to introduce it every single time, regardless of vertical industry, ask them about email and ask them how long they're keeping it. It's a great way to start that conversation about call recording, and that's a great way to introduce Oaisys, and we'll do all the rest of the work, helping you sell it, configure it, demonstrate it, whatever else you need. So we've got a fantastic partnership with Toshiba. We love working with you guys. We've worked really well over the last number of years and have an excellent track record and a lot of success stories. And we want to keep that going. So if you guys have a need, we're more than happy to help you cultivate that and turn it into a win for both of us.
That's great, Tony. Actually, one more question just flowed in, came in. Actually, I think it's addressed over myself. Will it run on the app server? Actually, I don't know that. I can check with product management. This is from Jim Beard. So I'll find the answer for you if they're planning on doing on the IP Edge application server or not. I know we're working on a virtualization project with the ACD. I'm not sure what, maybe you know, Tony, are you doing anything with our application server virtualization?
We're not doing anything. Well, see, Oaisys has to run on its own dedicated server.
Yeah.
We don't want the processing from IP Edge or from the Exchange server or anything else to impede the ability to record the calls, because it does take up a certain amount of overhead. So we do need to run on our own dedicated server, but that could be any virtual machine. We're VMware certified, but we can operate in a variety of different environments. So the short answer is it kind of depends, but the key is that we're never gonna be on another physical server with another application. We might be a virtual instance on a server with somebody else, but we're not going to be sharing the same operating system and database as the IP Edge server.
Okay, thank you, Tony. I believe this should wrap us up here because it's after 10:30. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. And again, sign up for next week's webinar. It's on the new website program. So make sure you inform the person who's in your office to make sure this can't miss webinar on the new website program. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.